Well, howdy. Coming to you from the Mojave Desert to talk to you about why your social life is not what it could be. So if your social life is completely satisfying, fulfilling, and thriving, you have lots of true, close friendships, and you feel like whoever you want to meet, the mentors you'd like to be in contact with, that's all within reach, then don't watch this video. You're fine. If your social life isn't everything it could be, then let's talk. Because your social life is a huge determinant of your overall life success in any given area, your overall life satisfaction. Your ability to grow as a person is largely determined by what kinds of people you get to spend time with and connect with. So, if you'd like to have a more fulfilling social life, then let's talk. Now, the most important thing I would say is having those true friendships. So I'm going to start by telling you why you would listen to me on this topic. Now, I have a good collection of true, deep friendships. I feel very blessed in that area. But I've also intentionally cultivated that. I've decided to learn how to improve my ability to meet new people and connect more deeply with the people I know. It's been a conscious effort, and it's been a very successful conscious effort. So there's the deep friendships, and then there's also mentors. I could list a long list of people who have been profoundly influential mentors in my life, and I think that's very important. So I'll do a little bit of name dropping here, and I run the risk of sounding like I'm bragging. But it's important for me to get this message across. And so if you think I'm bragging, try to realize the point of this is that actually what I'm about to share isn't that big of a deal. It's not even something to brag about. It's something that just should be accessible to you. So that is that I've met a lot of people who I've wanted to meet, including like famous people. So who's an example? I've spent time with the brother of Terrence McKenna, if you know who that is, Dennis McKenna. I've sat down and had coffees and lunches, and he was recently on my podcast. You can check that out. But also, I wanted to meet Jordan Peterson and have a conversation. And I got to do that. I've been backstage with Jordan Peterson twice. Who else? Dan Koe. If you're familiar with his newsletters or his YouTube videos, Dan Koe is quite a renowned online creator. And I've gone on a hike with him. I've spent time on calls with him. In fact, I'm organizing an event in Canada next year that he'll be speaking at. Who else? There's others. But, these are people who you might at first thought think, well, that would be a hard person to access, right? And part of the reason you would think that is because since they are famous, they have a lot more attention on them. They have a lot of people who pay attention to them. And your mind would tell you that because they have that many people paying attention, and most of those people don't get direct access and direct contact with them, you probably can't either. And it's just sort of this default belief system that they're inaccessible. And now it also comes from this weird detachment that we have from the very planet we live on, from the bodies we live in, and from the fact that every other person is essentially the same creature as you, wandering through a mysterious life on a mysterious planet. So when I think of those people I mentioned, like Dennis McKenna, Jordan Peterson, Dan Koe, none of them are people who you should think are some kind of otherworldly, larger-than-life figures. They're literally just the same creature as you, who happens to have done things that have got a lot of attention on them. Well, okay, they haven't all been direct mentors exactly, but I also have had lots of mentors. When I was 10 years old, Gary Savard, a magician, became my mentor, and I then had a 5-year-long magic career. I learned that I could have a career doing something fun. I could make money having fun. My dad and I ended up performing together for 5 years, doing hundreds of magic shows. I had a writing mentor when I went to the University of the Fraser Valley, starting in 2016. I ended up in the class of Dr. Trevor Carolan, who connected me with all kinds of waves of thought and people who already were of great interest to me. In fact, the Dennis McKenna connection came after another sort of mutual connection. Wade Davis, a world-renowned anthropologist, explorer in residence at National Geographic, and also an incredible photographer. He's written like 30-some books. Well, I wrote down in a journal that I would like to learn directly from Dennis McKenna and Wade Davis. Both of them are botanists. They're both knowledgeable about plants, both knowledgeable about lots of different cultural relationships with plants. Ethnobotany is the name of that field of study. Wade is more specifically an anthropologist. He teaches at the University of British Columbia. And Professor Carolan, who I ended up studying with at the university, happened to have some connection with Wade. And somehow that sort of synchronously guided me to end up being able to meet him, do an interview, later do an interview with Dennis McKenna. And I was interested in the McKenna brothers. I was interested in Carl Jung. I was interested in the synchronicity and the Chinese Book of Changes, the I Ching. And I land in Professor Carolan's class and start talking about and writing about some strange topics, and it turns out he had a lot of the same sorts of interests and connections. He actually was connected with some of the original beatnik writers like Allen Ginsberg, Gary Snyder, and deeply in touch with the beauty and power of language, also the limits, and how language can actually sever us from our connection with nature, which I'd like to bring up again because when we think about famous people, generally you've heard of them through digital media, right? You've seen them in movies, you've watched them on YouTube, you've read their books, and it kind of makes them seem otherworldly, right? You don't typically run into them in your day-to-day life. Meanwhile, they scrub their armpits just like you. So they're just somewhere on the same planet, however many feet or miles from you, living their lives. And just as interested in connecting with fellow humans as you, although maybe a little bit more conservative with their schedules and careful who they allow in. So, what's the point of all this? Part of the point of all this is I want to expand your belief system a little bit. I want to expand your beliefs about what's possible. And when I wrote those sorts of things down in a notebook, I'd like to learn directly from these people. I'd like to meet and interview Jordan Peterson, and so on. I'd like to start a convention in Vancouver, Canada, and have Dan Koe come and speak at it. These ideas can seem far-fetched, and so then you just don't even bother considering them. They just seem outside of the realm of believability, and so you don't try. Maybe if you're a guy, you want to meet pretty women and talk to them and go on dates. And you see someone that you'd like to meet, and already your mind is giving you excuses. Well, maybe she's already got a boyfriend, or who am I? I don't know. I don't look that good today. I need to shave my beard a little better before I talk to a pretty girl. I can't do that. But in reality, when you don't allow yourself to be so confined by those beliefs, so much becomes possible, and your energy changes, and then the pretty women do want to talk to you just because you're not worried about whether or not this or that outcome is possible. You're not really so concerned about the outcome. You're more so just willing to engage with the world. You're willing to engage with people, and it's a very small minority of people who take the risk and approach the girl or reach out to the celebrity they would like to speak with. And you don't have to have any interest in talking to celebrities. Just because someone's famous doesn't make them relevant to you, right? The point is, you want to connect with the people who are relevant in the sense that a relationship, a connection with them might be nourishing, exciting, interesting, meaningful. So really it comes down to friendship, right? You want high quality relationships in your life. And we tend to just settle for what already feels believable and real, right? And we often match with a lot of the people who have similar habits and beliefs as we do. And then we reaffirm each other's limiting beliefs. And if you were to say to someone, I want to get a singing lesson from Miley Cyrus, they'll just take it as a joke, right? And when I say it, I kind of am joking, but also, actually, that'd be cool. I'd like to meet Miley. I've never necessarily been a huge fan of her music. I think she's talented, and it would be fun to get a singing lesson from her or to have her on my podcast. So if this message somehow reaches Miley Cyrus, hey, I would love to get a singing lesson from you. See, that right there is like a delusional level of belief, right? As if such and such specific person is going to see this video and then find my phone number and, hey, yeah, I'm ready to give you a free singing lesson. Yeah, right. Not likely. But sometimes the world is very mysterious, and it just leads you to the opportunities to meet the people you want to meet if you step past the boundary of your pre-existing beliefs. So when it comes to, let's see, I have a particular example I want to go deeper into. So Jordan Peterson, regardless of what you think about different political attitudes and whatever, he's been an interesting participant in certain cultural dialogues, and I wanted to meet him, okay? Now, I wrote that down a couple of years or more before I ended up meeting him several times, and the way it happened is very strange and personally synchronous. So I'm also a woodworker, right? I'm a wood carver. I sometimes make stuff. And I took a university course on West Coast Indigenous art history and then ended up realizing, oh, Peterson, he has all these carvings from this Indigenous man who I realized happened to live near me, Charles Joseph, a Kwakwaka'wakw carver. I'm probably saying that incorrectly. Anthropologists have referred to the several native tribes that are sort of connected by a language group, Kwakwala. They used to refer to the whole group of tribes as the Kwakiutl, I believe. Famous for their potlatch ceremonies. Also terribly mistreated by the Canadian government historically, but that's not what this video is about. What this video is about is that somehow I ended up becoming friends with Charles because at first I just wanted to interview him so I could write a good essay for that class. And then it turned out he's a friendly guy. And he has all kinds of stories about terribly difficult stuff he's overcome in life, what his art and culture has done for the healing process, and what his friend Jordan Peterson has done to help him become more free from the addictions of his past. So it was through Charles that I got to then meet Jordan in person a couple of times and to go backstage and have a conversation. I sat on a couch and I gave him one of my wooden wallets. Well, I gave them to his wife Tammy. I gave them two of them. And got to sit down and have a little chat about how Charles and I became friends and about the topic of the speech he gave that day was about being grateful in spite of your suffering. And Charles is an incredible example of that. So it was very cool to sit there with the two of them and talk about that topic, because suffering is part of life. And gratitude does a lot to alleviate it. But it's a choice. It's a courageous choice to be grateful in spite of your suffering. But this is an example of how I met someone who might have seemed unreachable and yet was just 2 degrees of separation or barely out of reach. He wasn't out of reach. And it's the same thing with other people I've met, and not just famous people, right? Just people who profoundly impacted my life in a positive way. Who, if I wasn't open and receptive to the possibility of having that connection, having maybe, let's say, a deeper connection with a professor at my university instead of just going to his classes, ending up going out to the city where he lives and helping repaint his house, and being granted all kinds of strange opportunities, like to attend a poetry reading from Michael McClure, who taught Jim Morrison of The Doors some of his philosophy of poetic expression. Strange things that just would not have happened if I was closed off to the possibility of deeper connection and being granted opportunity by people, like to see that people want to help you. And also, when it comes to someone you might think is not available to you, again, it doesn't have to be someone famous. Let's just say there's someone who it would be great if they could mentor you a little bit. Well, actually, a famous person is a better example in this case, because what I'm getting at is, if someone's famous, you might think, well, they wouldn't make time for me because they are such and such, whatever the belief is. Their time is too important for little old me. Well, one of my answers when people ask, how have you met all these people? How do you network so effectively? I say, assume they might be humble. Just because someone's famous doesn't mean they are on some kind of high horse where if you aren't also a member of the elite circles, you're not going to be able to talk to them. Assume they might be humble. Assume that when they meet you, they might see you as a fellow human creature walking the earth, not too different from them. Right? A lot of people who are super successful, they also are perfectly happy to acknowledge that there was luck, there was blessings involved, there was circumstance, there was maybe some certain privileges that their upbringing allowed them to have in life. And so they're often actually not arrogant people. They're people who have faced hardship and they feel grateful that they're successful and that they have money. So if you meet them as a fellow human, it's a lot more inviting than when you go up to someone and you treat them like they're some kind of king or queen, right? Like, oh, it's such an honor to meet you. If I could just get a photograph, if I could just have 10 seconds of your time. That's something that happens to them so often that they have to sort of cut it out and ignore it. It's kind of annoying, right? How would you feel if people constantly came up to you on the street or reached out to you with this sort of reverence that was not actually appropriate to the reality that you're just a fellow human? So mostly it all comes down to belief and getting out of your head about it. So here I am going on this desert walk, and when I turn the camera off, I'm going to mostly stop thinking. I'm just going to take it all in, feel the heat. I'm so grateful to be here right now and be with these beautiful palm trees. I'm just going to take it all in, make eye contact with coyotes and road runners. And when you get out of your head, you actually end up with way more creative bandwidth, and you're able to see more of what's possible. You're less confined by the habitual thoughts that tell you, here's the limits of reality. Here's the limits of what's possible for you. Instead, you sort of see beyond your habitual thoughts, you see beyond words and language, and you don't even think of anyone. The word celebrity or status or money, like that all sort of dissolves in the face of this presence. Just presence. If you're just present with what is, suddenly it's not that shocking that great things are possible for you too. But a large part of it is about letting go of what you thought was possible. And the hard thing about that is it gets built into your identity. It really feels true. So I invite you to write down goals that feel unreasonable. I invite you to entertain the possibility of much greater things being in store for you than you've previously imagined. And they will start to happen. Okay, I'm going to sign off for now. There will be some links down in the description if certain things I've said sound interesting to you, like the Creator Economy Convention in Vancouver, Canada. Or if you're looking to have a little more time freedom in your life, eventually maybe break free from employment, another offer that I have is the Web Dev Rebellion. It's the Wild West of the World Wide Web. And I'm showing you how to divest yourself from the world of being a tenant, being a internet renter, and instead becoming an internet landlord. And web design is easier than it's ever been, more profitable for the normal average IQ guy like me than it's ever been. So I can show you how to become a web design freelancer if you want. But that aside, check out the Unblocked Creators podcast, where I interview all kinds of people about these very things, how to achieve their creative dreams and see beyond the blocks of limiting beliefs, see what's really possible to live an examined life, to live a fulfilling, creative, nourishing life, and to be deeply connected to your fellow humans and other beings as well. To be deeply connected to life and enthralled to be alive. That should be normal to you. I hope this is encouraging. I hope it's insightful. And I hope you pursue your highest potential and follow your heart.